Welcome to Kent, home of historic towns, stunning wetlands, and one of the UK's biggest, dirtiest power stations, Kingsnorth, which burns up to 20,000 tonnes of coal every day. And it's Kingsnorth that's putting this small corner of Kent on the map, because German energy giant E.ON want to build the UK's first new coal-fired power station in over 20 years on this site. But with the world teetering on the edge of climate chaos, new coal at Kingsnorth will be a disaster for Kent, for Britain, and for the world.
I'm Viv Parker and I come from a place in Walderslade, which is south of Medway. When I first heard about the plans to rebuild the coal-fired power station at Kingsnorth, I was angry. I care about the environment. I thought, this can't happen, we mustn't let it happen. I am particularly worried about the emissions. I mean, the air quality in Medway is absolutely diabolical and it's actually getting worse. It's also going to impact badly on wildlife. They freely admit over there that the outfall is going to have hot water coming out of it, which is going to be affecting invertebrate life. Birds feed on invertebrates. It's going to impact on them.
Viv's worries about Kingsnorth are shared by a whole host of organisations working to stop climate change. Ruth Davis at the RSPB is surprised coal's back on the agenda and very concerned about the potential impact on wildlife.
It is surprising to hear a government that has apparently been advocating emissions cuts in the UK prepared to accept the idea of new coal. It is surprising because it isn't compatible with a drive towards the low carbon economy. If we don't tackle climate change, we know that the results for wildlife will be devastating at a global level, but also at a local level. As the sea level rises, it tends to back up against our existing flood defence barriers, and you lose that vital bit of habitat in between, which is made up of salt marshes and mudflats, where all the birds like oyster catchers and curlew and all those familiar birds from the seashore go to get their food. So sea level rise is potentially a massive problem.
And it's not just wildlife that will feel the effects of climate change in Kent. A warmer and more unpredictable climate will endanger Kent's age-old fruit-growing traditions. Coastal erosion from rising sea levels will put homes at risk, sending insurance premiums sky high. And extreme temperatures will threaten the elderly and vulnerable, like the 2003 heatwave, which claimed over 2,000 British lives.
And it's down to power stations like that, not just here, but right across the world. And if Kingsnorth goes ahead, then any coal-fired power station can go ahead, and we've just got to stop it.
When E.ON applied for planning permission for the new plant at Kingsnorth, Medway COUNCIL raised no formal objections, but some councillors were unhappy that they could only consider the building and not the type of power station it would contain.
I think it's a shame because I feel that the council should have considered the power unit as part of the planning application. And I feel the council should have raised objections. The council was a little bit too close to E.ON. It didn't keep its distance. And that's down to an attitude pressure that E.ON were putting both on the council and government to actually make a determination in their favour.
And there were also concerns over how the plans were presented to the public.
If you looked at the publicity, you would have thought that carbon capture and storage and combined heat and power were part of the planning application. There's great emphasis on how clean this power station was going to be, but the two things, carbon capture and storage and combined heat and power, aren't part of the planning application. It was misleading.
Despite not objecting locally, the council asked the government to hold a national public inquiry into the new plant. It was a call immediately echoed by campaigners across the country who took to the streets to talk to people about Kingsnorth. Layla Dean from the World Development Movement explains why they got involved with the campaign.
Well, Kingsnorth is obviously not just a local issue, it's very much a national issue of how we stop climate change. Kingsnorth is set to be the first of 7 new coal-fired power stations across the UK. And this is the sort of policy that we just need to completely rethink if we're going to stop climate change. Kingsnorth coal-fired power station emits 7 million tonnes of CO2, and that's the same amount as 30 developing countries. So what we're talking about is one power station contributing as much to climate change as 30 developing countries does per year. If you're really serious about cutting your emissions, you need to be really serious about cutting out coal.
MPs from all parties have condemned the plans for a new generation of coal power plants in the UK. Steve Webb, Shadow Environment Secretary for the Liberal Democrats, says any new coal would have a devastating effect.
The real worry is, first of all, Kingsnorth spewing out CO2 into the atmosphere and perhaps another 10 behind it in the queue doing the same thing. It would be catastrophic, both for British policy and for the global environment.
E.ON's response to their critics is simple. Carbon capture and storage will save the day. But is this really a viable hope? Many experts, like Bridget Woodman from Exeter University, are sceptical.
The technology at the moment doesn't really exist. It's just a pipe dream, and it's a very expensive pipe dream. The difficulty is that what you're trying to do is capture and contain what is essentially a pollutant, and you're trying to do that over enormously long timescales, including geological timescales.
When the government or the energy companies say that Kingsnorth would be ready for carbon capture, that's warm words that don't mean anything. It just means there's a gap in the plant, there's a space in the car park, there's a socket you could screw it onto. That's a nonsense, because it might not come for years unless it's forced to happen. The market won't deliver this thing.
Carbon capture and storage is not really part of the debate. It's not something that we can expect to have in the time that we need to achieve it in order to stop catastrophic climate change. We need to reduce our emissions by 40% by 2020. And even the Chancellor, Alistair Darling, has said that we will not have any kind of viable carbon capture and storage technology until at least that date.
Stop burning fossil fuels! We demand renewables! Stop burning fossil fuels!
In fact, focusing on carbon capture only distracts us from the real solutions.
I mean, a combination of energy efficiency and renewables in the longer term will provide all of the UK's energy needs, as long as politicians seize the opportunities now. The problem is that because the government is allowing the easy short-term options to be put in place, it's neglecting the potential that the UK has to actually be driving the world renewables market.
As long as you're building new coal-fired power stations, you're not investing in renewables, you're not investing in wind, in solar, in tidal, all of which are non-fossil based fuels which the UK could produce very well. In fact, we've promised at the EU to get 43% of our electricity from renewable sources. So if we do that, if we commit the investment that we need to get to that figure, there's absolutely no need for an energy gap. It's a complete myth which has been stirred up by corporations and the government to continue business as usual, when that's exactly what we don't need if we want to stop climate change.
One of the most compelling arguments against new coal at Kingsnorth is the disproportionate impact of rising CO2 levels on developing countries, as Mary Lou Malig from Focus on the Global South explains.
The effects of climate change can be felt by everybody in the world over. And in fact, what happens is that the effects of climate change can be felt mostly by the poor people in the world. And it's the poor people who don't have any options. For example, if extreme weather conditions, droughts, floods, typhoons, wipe out entire livelihoods, communities, schools, poor people don't have any choice or alternatives to this. They have to live with it, that their livelihoods are completely destroyed.
In Asia, they're suffering water shortages. In Africa, farmers that used to be able to farm their land every season are finding that they have to move on. In Bangladesh, we see that where they used to have floods once every 20 years, they have floods every 5 to 7 years. So we're already seeing results across the world of catastrophic climate change, and yet we're continuing to consider outdated policies like building new coal-fired power stations, which are only going to make that situation worse.
I think that it's really selfish to put it in one word, you know, to think that, okay, well, we need more energy, so therefore we're going to put up a coal power plant, without thinking about the rest of the world who's already feeling the impact, and how much more emissions are going to be caused by this new coal power plant, which is going to devastate even more countries who are already feeling the devastating impacts of climate change right now.
The fight against new coal can seem daunting. In the United States, energy companies are trying to push through 150 new coal-fired power stations, but battles are already being won. American coal campaigner Bruce Nillis describes how they took the battle to the coal power plants.
When we began our campaign 4 years ago and we were facing a flood of 150 coal plants, we didn't know how to approach this problem except for go back to the basics of knowing how to run grassroots organizing, public education, opposition campaigns at a high level. And when we began, everyone doubted whether or not we could do this. Everyone said it wasn't possible, they're going to get built, just go work on something else. And we said no. There's too much at stake. We have to win this fight. And if we look back in 2007, it was the best year we've ever had in terms of incredible public awareness about global warming. We had 31 coal plants that were defeated in 2007. That was about $40 billion worth of investment that was taken out of coal and will now be directed into something cleaner. I think the good news is there is a lot of people who get very excited when they realize what's at stake and are willing to work really hard to solve this problem. Our challenge is to make sure we're doing it fast enough and to keep up the incredible work that's going on around the world.
Back home, Kingsnorth has become the focus for thousands of activists willing to take action to stop the new facility being built.
The science overwhelmingly tells us that we cannot deal effectively with climate change and still maintain a fossil fuel economy. Coal is the dirtiest of all the fossil fuels out there. To build a new generation of coal-fired power stations would be absolutely disastrous. We have no option but to take action as concerned citizens. And that's why this summer, the Camp for Climate Action will be pitching our tents outside Kingsnorth to take action and shut down the coal-fired power station.
Just like the 2007 camp at Heathrow, the climate camp at Kingsnorth is a chance for campaigners to explore positive solutions as well as protesting negative ones.
The Camp for Climate Action is all about living sustainably, democratically, and educating ourselves, whilst at the same time taking action against the root causes of climate change. And the idea of shutting down the station is to say, look, we are trying absolutely everything we can to deal with climate change through the establishment, if you like. But if that doesn't work, and it looks increasingly like that isn't working, certainly not within the timescales that we need to be dealing with, the only option we have is to take action as individuals, as concerned citizens, and act democratically and close down that power station.
Stopping Kingsnorth is certainly going to be a challenge, but the campaign is gaining momentum all the time, and voices on all sides believe it's a battle just waiting to be won.
And the only way that we can stop climate change is for all of us to be in solidarity with one another, both in the north and in the south. And stopping, for example, the Kingsnorth coal power plant is one step towards achieving climate justice. And if people in the UK can stop the government from putting up the Kingsnorth coal power plant, then that's a great step towards achieving climate justice.
We can stop Kingsnorth Power Station, and we have to stop it. It's an issue of global justice, it's an issue for climate change, and it's a democracy issue. People in the UK don't want new coal power. They want to help stop catastrophic climate change. The World Development Movement has always taken on campaigns that affect people in the global south, but can be changed by people in the UK. So what we're saying to the government is, rethink your coal policy, stop Kingsnorth.
Stop Kingsnorth.
Stop Kingsnorth.
Stop Kingsnorth.
Stop Kingsnorth.
Stop Kingsnorth.